a society and a culture is made up of individuals, and individual choices and individual lives is all it is. There's not a society without the individuals. The individual integrity and focus, and basically the soul of each individual is imperative to the health of the entire society. And I think the biggest challenge that we're going into, it's already here, but it's going to get more and more and more of a problem, and absolutely nobody's talking about it. They're talking about like edges, or they're talking about the branches, but the root of this problem is guarding your focus, guarding your time, guarding your integrity, and ultimately guarding your own autonomy as an individual. Because your choices, so the thing is, you have a life, and you can choose to make it your life, or you can choose a pre-made identity to latch onto and follow that, right? You can choose to basically get infinitely distracted, and that's where the biggest problem comes in. People have access to infinite amount of information. There's infinite rabbit holes you can go down into and completely subvert, your entire life. And you're doing it, right? You are basically either you're making a conscious choice, or you're just basically following the rabbit trail that happens to be there in front of you, and you don't realize that you're foregoing what you could have done. Your opportunity costs are so great. It's kind of like having you're going bowling, right? And so the intention of bowling is to not go in the gutter, right? Well, there's a plane in the middle, and there's two gutters, and then you're supposed to stay in the middle. Well, now it's like there's a million gutters, and you have this little tiny narrow path to where the ball is supposed to actually go, and then there's a million gutters that are trying to, the ball, once the ball reaches inside that gutter, it's like you're done, right? It's kind of like that, where there's so many things that can subvert and get you. I hesitate to use the term distracted, because technically that's what's happening, but it's such a overused term to where distraction to a lot of people in their mind means that you just like got distracted based on, you went into a room and you plan on, doing something, and then you just got distracted and you didn't do it. Well, this is like that times a million, because this your entire life, becomes a off-purpose path. So when you guard your autonomy, you have to start off with guarding your focus. Like, what's your attention, what you look at, what you hear, what you, just every sense that you have to guard it, and not allow things to go into your brain that you do not choose for that to happen. And there's so many things that, so like say you go onto a social media platform and you start scrolling, you notice you have no control over what's going to pop up next, right? That's a big problem when it comes to your autonomy. If you want to be an autonomous person, you have to control what you're consuming. Your mind is consuming. If you want to be healthy, you have to control what food you're consuming. With your mind, in order to be healthy, and as an individual, especially, is that you have to control what your mind is consuming. And it's challenging, if you don't have this mindset, if you don't have this idea in advance, and you're just basically going forward in life, then you're not going to actively guard your time and focus and attention, and your integrity is going to go out the window. And then your autonomy as an individual is also going to go out the window. Your ideas are going to get planted like seeds in your head that are going to grow. Perceptions are going to grow in your mind. Ideas are going to grow in your mind. People's other people's agendas are going to go in your mind. Other people's thoughts, emotions, negativity is going to grow in your mind. There's very few, even if somebody has full 100% intention to help you, it's very, very hard for one individual to help another person as far as their mindset. There's a tendency for people to think they know, and because they're not familiar with cognitive biases. Cognitive biases are basically like your brain has certain tendencies in order to trip you up and fail, pitfalls, things that, just common errors that your mind does as a, to some degree, a survival instinct, survival technique, which a lot of times it trips you up instead of, helps you, right? And it's so common, and it's such a repeated thing over time that people just kind of made a list of them. It's like, well, these are so common, we just got to write this down. And then, so cognitive biases are basically that list. And you can look at that and you can understand that, like, there's times in which I might think that I know more than what I do on a particular subject. Or there may be times in which I focus too much on negativity when there's so much positive things happening. There's different cognitive biases that just people are just unfamiliar with, and so they don't even look into it, and so that's one drawback, is just sheer ignorance, right? And then just kind of like feeling that you're going on feeling, right? Like, your impulses are your guidance. So yes, there is gut instincts that are valid, but they have to be paired with mental capacity and understanding, to take full advantage of it. And so, if you were to guard your focus, guard your time, and only do things and only absorb things that are based on your goals that you came up with, not somebody else implanted that goal in your head, not somebody else or some organization or whatever it is, it's really hard to scrape all that out of your mind and start fresh. Like, what's really best for me, right? What am I supposed to do? Like sometimes your responsibilities, like say as a parent, or your whatever commitments you have that are important, sometimes you have to set aside your own desires and your own whims to make sure that your responsibilities, especially as a parent, are fulfilled. And so, that's on path. And how do you fulfill your how do you feel your responsibilities as a parent, right? Most people don't even know. Once again, they're trying to just let instincts take over, and since people are whimsical, they feel they mistake their whims as their instincts, and their feelings as their thoughts. And so if you're in a bad mood, then your instincts are going to lead you in the wrong path, right? You're going to do things that are wrong. Then you get mad, you get angry, you're going to say things that you don't mean, or you regret. You do things that you regret, so that when your emotions are at the forefront all the time, then there's problems, right? There's problems. So you have to pair your instincts with your brain, and try to think things through and understand things first. Then you can also have your instincts as a guide. So yeah, it's really hard to get people to understand. And so I've made several videos talking about guarding your autonomy and trying to hit it from different angles, because I think it's such an important topic, and it's like nobody wants to talk about it. So like one thing people talk about is screen time with technology. They're blaming technology, and that's basically for a lot of problems. But the problem is technology is not the problem. It can be used to exacerbate the problem, and that's where I think is going to be more important to understand this is because it's very easy to take a small misstep and just go, have a huge problem with that small misstep because, the technology is basically amplifying this effect, like you hear echo chambers and you hear all these different things. And there's just a disconnect in general with individuality and individual and, collective, like understanding what a collective is, and what a society is, what a country is, what a culture is, and not understanding that it's made of individuals, and individuals, like, the sovereignty of the individual, like the United States the intention was to provide a understanding that the value is at the individual level, and then the society is only valuable based on the individuals within it. So if everybody's a collective, right? If everybody's moving as one, all it takes is one misstep to go off a cliff, But if you have 1 million people and one person falls off the cliff, then everybody can recognize that and not go off the cliff, right? It's a crude example, but unification of mind is not always a good thing. There could be peace within common understandings, but it's based on pillars of individuals, So yeah, guarding your focus is the first step. And to try to, clarify your mind and find out, like, you kind of have to dig in like like an archaeologist and sort out your mind. So like Jordan Peterson talks about this, sort yourself out, right? Well, how do you do that? How do you sort yourself out? Well, you got to sort yourself out from the rest of the mess that's in your mind. You as an individual, who are you as an individual, especially if you're an adult and you don't know anything about this, you've never thought about this topic, then it's like, okay, well, who am I? Like, you start to realize that there's all these seeds growing in your mind, and they're basically like weeds that are choking out who you originally were or who you could be. And it becomes a huge problem, it becomes a very huge problem because, it may take years of self-reflection and to pull out the weeds and figure out what you are. And, there's like this little itty bitty teeny weeny self within a huge amount of other agendas, and also psychological defenses and all kinds of different things that have built up and are just scrambling your actions and your focus and attention, and it causes all kinds of problems, a lot of problems. So trying to get to who you are first, then you can move forward in the direction that you choose, right? And not other people's agendas, not other things that are trying to subvert your agenda. What is my agenda? Like that. It's such a foundational thing. The idea that you are partially not you, your actions and your thoughts are partially not you, is very disturbing, and nobody wants to face that. Nobody wants to face that. But if you think about it for like few moments, then you realize that's actually the case, and it's very disturbing.